Hey friends, welcome back. Today we've got another budget-friendly meal video for you. So this is actually the fourth tier meal video in the series. In case you want to check out the other ones, I'll leave those links for you below. And in case you're new to this, how it works is that we share different recipes with you in the video. Each of the recipes serves 4 in total, and each of those servings comes out to be about €2 each, which is about $2 each. And the prices that you see on the screen, those are based on the groceries that we did at our local grocery stores, and we're based in the Netherlands. So you might find that the prices are going to be different depending on where you live. More than anything, hopefully these are just new recipes that you can try out. And you can also use this video as like a tool just to see, what ingredients cost more and which ones cost a little bit less, things like potatoes and peas. We've also added a bit of a theme to today's video. These are all going to be curry-inspired recipes, so hopefully you enjoy. Let's dive right in. For the first recipe, we're making a slurp-worthy coconut Thai green curry noodle soup. So we'll begin first by pressing a 375-gram block of firm tofu over the sink, just to drain it of any excess liquid, and then we can cut it into small little 1 centimeter bite-sized cubes. Now moving over to the stove, to a large pan on medium-high, we're gonna add in a couple teaspoons of vegetable oil, and when it's hot, we can add the tofu to the pan. I also like to sprinkle on about a 1/4 teaspoon or so of salt, and we're gonna cook this until it's nice and golden on all sides, which takes about 7 to 10 minutes or so. Now while that cooks, we're going to prep our veggies. So I'm gonna finely chop 1 large shallot, but if you've got an onion instead, that also works great. We're also gonna thinly slice 4 cloves of garlic, and we'll thinly slice 1 bell pepper. Finally, I'm gonna be using a stalk of lemongrass, which might be intimidating if you've never used it before, but it's really easy to use, and I'll show you how. It gives the dish a lovely, mild, unique, citrusy flavor, and most grocery stores carry them these days. We got ours from our local Asian supermarket, so that's nice, but it is totally optional, so if you can't find it, don't worry about it. So what we want to do first is to remove the root end, and then also the part of the stalk that kind of gets green near the top. So what we're going to be left with is about this 4-inch, more kind of white colored stalk. First, we're going to remove the outer layer of it before we smash the lemongrass. And we do this to extract its fragrant oils and scent. And then as for these extra little pieces, feel free to hang on to them if you make any homemade stocks. It makes for a great addition to those. Next, we're gonna move on to making the green broth. So to a blender, we're gonna add in 400 milliliters of coconut milk. We're also gonna add in 1 vegetable bouillon cube, 2 cups of cold water, a full cup of packed fresh spinach, and a 1/3 cup of packed fresh basil leaves. Then we're gonna blitz this on high until it's smooth. So the spinach that's in this broth is the secret ingredient that makes this so vibrantly green. It makes the dish really beautiful. So now that this is blended up, we're gonna set it aside for now. Returning to the stove, by now the tofu should be done cooking, and if it is, it's nice and golden, we can transfer it to a plate. Now we can return the same pan to the heat, add a little bit, like a teaspoon or so of vegetable oil, and when it's hot, we're gonna add in the garlic and shallot, and we're gonna cook this until it's nice and lightly golden. Now while that's cooking, we can prep the noodles. So for this, I'm gonna be using 180 grams of rice noodles. You can choose between brown rice noodles for a bit more fiber, but white rice noodles also work great, and it tends to be a bit more affordable. So we're just gonna pour some boiling hot water over top, and after a couple minutes, it's already done and it can be drained. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna divide the noodles into our bowls. Now returning to the pan when the onions and garlic are golden, we can add in 3 tablespoons of a vegan Thai green curry paste, along with the lemongrass, 1 teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, and an optional 3 dry kaffir lime leaves. Now we're gonna give this a stir so that the lemongrass and the herbs in the curry paste start to toast a little bit, and then we're gonna add in the bell pepper, sauteing it and stirring it for another couple minutes or so. Just a little heads up about the curry paste. If you happen to be vegan, be sure to check the label, because sometimes they contain things like shrimp paste or fish sauce in them, but luckily not all of them. So checking the label always helps. And in case you're interested in making your own green curry paste at home, we have a recipe for it on the blog, so I'll leave that link for you in the description box below. Returning to the pan, we're now gonna add in 150 grams of snow peas. We're gonna stir this, letting it cook for about 30 seconds or so before we pour the vibrant green broth into the pan as well. We're gonna wanna let this one come to a gentle simmer, so once it's heated through, we can then remove it from the heat. Now just before serving this one up, we want to remove the lemongrass and the kaffir lime leaves from the soup These were just to add flavor, but they're not for eating. And then I also like to add a bit of fresh lime juice, which I think really brings all the flavors of the soup together. So the juice from half a lime does the trick, but feel free to add in more if you'd like. And then once we've stirred that in, we're ready to serve this one up. So we're gonna gently ladle the vibrant green coconut broth and veggie mixture over top the noodles. And when all of the broth has been divided over the bowls, there's always the option to add some optional garnishes, like for example, maybe some fresh bean sprouts on the side. Of course, we're gonna add our crisp tofu that we just cooked on top. And if you'd like, you can add some aromatic basil leaves on the side. This noodle soup, I feel like, is just such a heavenly combination of flavors. And if you're planning to make this one ahead of time for meal prep, just be sure to store the noodles separately from the broth and only combine them when you're ready to enjoy it. So the grand total for this recipe comes out to €1.80 per serving. And if you choose to include all of the optional garnishes, then the total comes to €1.92 per serving. For the next recipe, we're gonna be making a comforting one-pot golden red lentil mushroom curry soup. So we're gonna begin by prepping the veggies. First, we're gonna chop 2 medium onions. We'll mince 4 cloves of garlic, and we're gonna freshly grate some ginger to make about half of a tablespoon's worth. We're also gonna slice 250 grams of mushrooms, and we're also gonna chop up about 3 medium ripe tomatoes. For this recipe, I'm gonna be using 1.5 cups of dry whole red lentils. And what we wanna do is we wanna wash the lentils to rinse away any debris. Next, we can move over to the stove. So to a large pan on medium-high heat, we're gonna add in about 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, along with half of a tablespoon each of brown mustard seeds and cumin seeds. We're gonna stir this continuously to toast the spices for about a minute in total until it becomes fragrant. And then we can add the onion, garlic, and ginger all at once, along with a teaspoon of dried red chili flakes. We're then gonna cook this for about 3 minutes or so. Then we can add the mushrooms to the pot along with half of a teaspoon of salt. And the salt here helps to draw the water out of the mushrooms. So we're gonna keep cooking this until most of that seeped out liquid and moisture has evaporated, which takes about 5 minutes or so. And then we can add in the rest of the spices, which is half of a tablespoon of ground coriander, a teaspoon of ground turmeric, and a bit of freshly cracked black pepper. If a recipe used to have a spice that I didn't have on hand, I used to just skip making it all together, but I want you to consider the spices in this recipe completely optional, so if you don't have 1 or 2 of them, just leave it out, or you could consider substituting it for an equal amount of curry powder, which would still all work out great. And then another budget-friendly tip here too is maybe consider getting your spices from an ethnic grocery store. I usually find them more affordable that way because you can buy them in bulk. I usually find them more tasty, flavorful too. So once we've added in all the spices, we're gonna give this a stir and we're gonna cook it for a minute or so before we then go ahead and add in the rinsed lentils, along with 1.5 vegetable bouillon cubes and 1.5 liters of water. We're gonna bring this all to a boil, and then we're gonna reduce it to a simmer, and we're gonna let it cook uncovered for about 10 to 15 minutes or until the lentils are cooked through. But while that's cooking away, we're gonna make our yogurt sauce. It's just 3 ingredients, super easy to make. So to a bowl, we're gonna add a cup of unsweetened plant-based yogurt. Here we're using soy yogurt, along with 1 clove of crushed garlic and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then we're gonna stir it, and that's it. So once the lentils are cooked through, what we'll wanna do is we're gonna add the tomatoes to the pot, give it a stir, let it cook to soften for about 3 minutes or so. And before I remove the pot from the heat, what I like to do is add an optional half of a tablespoon of dried fenugreek leaves. It gives a beautiful taste. We're just gonna stir this in, let it cook for about 30 seconds, and then we're gonna remove it from the heat. Now you can choose to serve this meal alongside some rice, but we're gonna be serving ours with some naan. A vegan store-bought naan works great if you'd like, but if you wanna make it yourself at home, we've got a recipe for a herb and garlic naan on the blog, so I'm gonna leave that link for you in the description box below. So when you're ready to enjoy this one, we can pour a generous few scoops of the curry soup into our bowls. We can drizzle over top the yogurt sauce, and then for some optional garnish, we can add a sprinkle of chili flakes and just a few fresh cilantro leaves. Here you can see that I only decoratively drizzled the yogurt sauce on top for presentation, but in reality what I'm usually doing is scooping huge spoonfuls of the yogurt sauce straight into the soup as I'm enjoying it. The grand total for this recipe comes out to be €1.57 per serving, and if you'd like to include the optional garnishes at the end, then the total comes to €1.65 per serving. For the final recipe, we're going to be making an aloo matar inspired potato and pea curry. This recipe is great anytime you feel like you don't have too many fresh ingredients in the fridge or if you're looking to use up some items in your pantry. The only prep that we need to do is to cut about 4 large waxy potatoes into about 1 inch or 2 centimeter bite-sized pieces. We're also gonna chop up 1 large onion. We'll mince 4 cloves of garlic. And finally, we're gonna grate roughly 2 teaspoons worth of fresh ginger. Now we can already start cooking. So to a large pan on medium-high heat, we're gonna add in a couple teaspoons of oil, and then to it, we're gonna add a teaspoon of coriander seeds and half of a teaspoon of cumin seeds. We're gonna cook the spices for about a minute or so until the seeds start to become fragrant, and then we can add in the onion, garlic, and ginger all at once. We're gonna cook this for another 3 minutes or so. Then we can add in all of the powdered spices. So we'll be adding in a teaspoon of garam masala and a teaspoon of salt, and then half of a teaspoon each of turmeric powder and cayenne pepper, and then finally roughly a quarter of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Then we're gonna give this all a stir, cooking it for a minute or two, just long enough to lightly toast the spices. And then in go our potatoes, which we're gonna cook for about 3 to 4 minutes in total. We're gonna keep stirring it so that the potatoes can coat in the spices, but also so that the spices don't burn. Then we can add in about a 400-gram can of diced tomatoes, cooking this for another couple minutes before we pour over top a cup of water. And then we're gonna bring this all to a boil, and we're gonna reduce it to a simmer for about 15 minutes while we cover the pot with a lid. Now, if you're gonna be choosing to serve your curry with rice, now is a good time to start cooking it so it's done at the same time as everything else. So here we've got 1.5 cups of brown rice that we first soaked overnight and then drained, and now we're gonna cook it up. Now, once the potatoes have been cooking for 15 minutes with the lid on, we're gonna take the lid off, we're gonna give it a stir, we're gonna let it cook for another 15 minutes, but this time uncovered. While that all cooks away, we're gonna grab a can of coconut milk, and we're gonna want to remove about half of a cup's worth of coconut cream, which is that thicker, more creamy layer that you often find on top of a can of coconut milk. And whatever's left over in the can, save it. You can always use it for future curries, smoothies, or soup recipes. No need to throw this away. If you're looking for any recipes containing some coconut milk and coconut cream, I'll leave some ideas for you in the description box below. Now, once the potatoes are cooked through, we can go ahead and add the coconut cream to it, along with a cup of frozen peas. And we're gonna cook this for another couple of minutes until it's all heated through. And then now we're ready to serve it up. So once we've added the cooked warm brown rice into a bowl, we're ready to scoop a generous amount of the aloo matar alongside it. Feel free to garnish this dish with some optional chopped cilantro, and then you're ready to enjoy it. The creaminess from the potatoes and the complex flavors from the spices all mixed in that tomato sauce make this a really comforting and filling meal, and it's one that also keeps really well. So feel free to pack up any extras, and then you've got lunch or dinner throughout the week. So the grand total for this recipe comes out to just 90 cents per serving. And if you choose to include the optional cilantro for garnish, then the total comes to just 97 cents per serving. I feel like you can never have too many curry recipes in your arsenal, so hopefully you've got some new ones that you're wanting to try out. I'd be curious to know which ones you want to try first. Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like the full breakdown to any of the recipes, I always leave those links in the description box as well. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Hope you enjoyed. Pickup Limes signing off, and we'll see you in the next video. It's going to reduce the gas-inducing... it decreases the cooking time by about half, and then... and we got ours blah, 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 blah.